Hi there, it's Dr. Embody. We're going to take a look at Project 5. And the basic idea of Project 5 is we want to answer the question, we're going to take a look at a political question. The standard dogma is that Democrats want to create big government, Republicans want to create jobs. And the neat thing about Python is that we can actually go and grab the original data and see whether that dogma is correct. And in fact, as part of this project, when you get all done, you have to write a paragraph about what you learned about the data. You know, what is that dogma correct? That's really what the question is. We went to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we extracted a couple of files on employment data, and then I created a file about the president's data. And let's take a look at that. So if we look at so this is the private employment file, and you can see it's got a header, and the very first thing is the year. And so we start in 1974, 75, 76, and so on. And then there's employment data for every month of the year, January through December. Okay, and as often, these files are provided with commas in between, so it's comma-separated values. The CSV type file, so we can use split with commas as we've done before and gather that data. And we're going to be interested in it by year, and this is an exercise in dictionaries. And so what we'll do is we'll have the key as the year, like in this case 1974, and the data will be a list of all the data that's for that year, and then the key for 75, and so on. So there's two files like that. The government file looks exactly the same, except it has government data in it. And so we're going to look at private employment and government employment and the presidents. So I created a file of presidents, and your program has to get the information about the presidents and when the Democrats are in power or the Republicans are in power and so on. That information has to come from this file. So like Carter is a Democrat, Reagan's a Republican, and so on. And so we're going to compare. There's two things we're going to do. One is we're going to see what the data is for the Democrats and what the data is for the Republicans, and do a comparison for the private as well as the government employment. And so take a look at this and say add up the jobs and see who has more jobs. The other thing that we're going to do is look at each president, and how many jobs when they started, how many jobs when then, and what was the change. And in some cases it's negative. But you have to extract the information out of this file. So for example, the Democrats, we have a Democratic president from 77 to 81, and then 93 to 2001, and 09 to 14. So you have to extract out those years. I found it handy to extract out, like, say, 77 to 91, and then actually make a list of all of those years, and then work off of that. And that would be the Democratic list, and then I'd have to do a similar thing for the Republicans, and so on. You might find a nicer way to do it. Maybe you're happier just dealing with the reigns. I found that pretty handy. And by the way, and then so what happens is that this particular year now becomes because we're indexing, it's very easy for us to now grab the employment data that is related to that particular year with an organization like that. There's a lot of ways to do this, and you have to make some decisions. So when you first look at these files, these come out as strings. Well, do you want to leave them as strings? Good. Or do you want to do them as numbers? That also works. Either one works fine. But those are some of the decisions that that you have to make with this. All right, so let's take a look, and what I did is I opened the employment file, and let's just take a look at that. So the first thing to do is, can I open it, and can I actually print out the stuff in there? That's usually a handy thing, and there it is, line by line. A lot of data in there. What's the interesting thing to do with it? Well, whenever we have comma separated data, let's split it, and we split on commas, and let's see what we get. Okay, so there we get the data. That's nice. Notice that as often happens, we've got these \n's at the end of the line. Be nice to get rid of those. So that's the strip. So we can strip those out, and then they're gone. So what I'd like to do is show you, how do I make a dictionary out of this? Well, dictionary is curly braces, and what I'd like to do is say, all right, I want to use my date. So what is the date? That's the first item in there. And of course, we have to watch out for the fact that there's a header line, so we're going to have to yank that out, but I'll leave that to you. I'm not going to deal with that at this moment. So that is the date, and then the data is the rest of the line. So I can just say d of the date is the rest of the line from 1 to the end. And when I run that, if I go and look at the D file, we see that the key, those are the dates. Those are in fact strings, and then we have a list of data. So 1974 has that information. Now, those are as strings. We might be, you might not want to use as simple a representation as this, and actually convert them to numbers. So, for example, maybe I want my date, the year, as an int. All right, that works. Or maybe you want to take the you can use list comprehension and build a list of ints out of that. But now, once you have this, when you grab the information out of the president's file, like, okay, Carter was president from 77 to 81. Well, if I want to look at the information for 1977, I guess at this point, let's see, I forget, did I rerun this? Let's rerun this. So I have, all right, so there's a problem. All right, I have a problem in that my line, the very first line, doesn't have numbers. So when I tried to convert year to a number, it wasn't very happy. So there's a couple of things I can do. One is I could just toss that line out, since I know it's the first one. The read line just reads a line, and usually you say something equals that, but I'm not going to do anything with that information. So now I can run this, and it's a lot happier. So when I'm looking at the president's data, and Jimmy Carter's first year was 1977, and so there's all the employment data for 1977, and I can just take that, and then I can go ahead and I can do it for 1978, and so on. Now, of course, those are coming out as strings. I'm going to want to fix that, so maybe take this maybe not do that so simply, but actually convert those into integers before I put them in there. But that's your basic idea. You have these two files, so you're going to have to read through the president's file and and sort of combine these two files. So it's important that what am I going to test this with? So I'm going to test it with this presidents.txt file, but I also might test it with some subset. So maybe I'll just look at those three presidents. And so your program has to be general enough to handle that. I describe it all in there, and there's some hints and so on. And at the end of the file, I actually ran it, and there are some things that get specified in there. Notice there's commas in there. Oh, isn't that nice? You see that some things that might be worth, if you look at some time when recent history here, you see that the employment difference for President Bush was in the negatives. For private employment, government employment was positive, and and Obama's was positive, and his government employment was actually negative, and so on. So there are and one of the things that I want to do is make some observations about the data and how does that fit with the dogma, and what I think is really important about this course is that there are things that everybody knows to be true, and maybe they aren't so true. And the beauty of Python is that you don't have to believe anything anybody else says. You can go out and grab the data yourself, draw your own conclusions. And I think that's personally, I think that's an important part of one's job as being in a democracy, is to be educated. So there's a few things about how to get started with this and what our overall goal is. And with that, hopefully that'll be enough to get you going.